Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ, where the Tennessee Volunteers are 24 hours removed from staving off the feisty Austin Peay Generals that many did not want to play in the first couple weekends of the college football season because of the level of feistiness that Scotty Walden and his bunch brought into Neyland Stadium, and he could have brought it any SEC stadium. So the Vols were up for the challenge and held strong to avoid a 1-1 start and stay there in the top 10 here right out of the gate as a 2-0 Tennessee Volunteers team. But to talk not just about the Tennessee Vols, but also college football as a whole, fellow University of North Georgia alumni Matt Green is here. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. It was an excellent day of college football, I thought, in week 2. We got just some unpredictability. It was some good stuff. And do we need to just get right into the Tennessee stuff? Like, are you doing all right? Like, how was it going over there in the first half?
Well, it's cool now that, like, peel behind the curtain here. On Sunday nights, we moved the Good Big Orange Friday show because we were doing a recap show Sunday nights, and getting to like air that out for me before coming on here kind of like adds layers of perspective. So I get my therapy session in before that, so it's not all bottled up for this where I just spring 10 minutes of just word vomit at you. I've kind of been able to recalibrate and really parse through where my head's at. And I think what's interesting is just it's a splintered fan base at the moment in terms of the quarterback, receivers, and should we panic, should we not? But I mean, hey, that Florida line was 9 not too long ago. It's down to 4.5 heading into game week. So I expect that number to drop a little bit more, but we shall see. We'll get into Tennessee momentarily, Matt Green, but we have bigger fish to fry, like how we did over the weekend. I'm kind of concerned based on our pre-recording chat here, because I feel like I did pretty good overall, but I'm also realizing, because I look at like the standings as a whole, and I'll tell people when they ask me my opinion on certain games, where I'm like, I tell them, oh yeah, I think it's so-and-so. And then I'll look back and I'm like, that wasn't even in our pick'em. And then I realize that's not going to count for me. So if I feel good where I do like this little fist bump in my living room, I'm like, nailed that one. And then I just go back and I see that wasn't on the list. That's not going to help me at all. Actually, that's just one for me. Score one for Chase. An exhibition win on that front. But yeah. Also, before we get into
whatever helps you sleep at night, it's those lesser games. It's cool to be right about those, but the real deal is on the pick'em.
I know. Chamomile tea helps me sleep. Big chamomile tea guy. It's always delicious. It's me and my nice little slumber as I get all cozy under my weighted blanket, Matt Green. But to add more clarity here, because we had some listeners who were curious about the whole Tori situation in terms of what she thought the home dog of the week was. Have you gotten clarity from Tori in terms of what she thought the home dog of the week was before you clarified it?
Yes, I actually did do some research, did some follow-up conversations with Tori, and turns out I guess she just thought home dog, like like my homie, my home dog. I don't know. Like, this is just Zeus's favorite team of the week. I wish I had a better explanation. But, yeah, she was, because every once in a while she'd be like, I don't even think Zeus likes that team that you picked. And it's like, so now it all makes sense, because she didn't even realize it was an underdog that was playing at home that week. So, yeah. But we've straightened it out, so she understands now.
I just love the idea of you posing this dog with this picture, and then you slapping a logo on. She's like, I guess Zeus just likes that logo, or Zeus just seems to be drawn to the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs for whatever reason. I don't know what to do with it, but if that's what Zeus likes it. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, it's pretty funny. Now she understands.
Now I want to ask my wife after this and just be like, what if I said that we had a home dog of the week this week? Where would your mind go? Because when you said it like that, if you're not a sports person, I think that would be a fair way to go about it, where you're like, your friend, you're someone you like. I get it.
I really like this guy this week.
I don't hate that. That's it makes sense to me, sir. But
Fair enough.
mystery solved.
Speaking of home dog of the week, a little debate, on how exactly to count it. I think Iowa State was the official home dog of the week, and they came close to covering to at least covering the spread, but no, that was just that game was pretty much exactly what we expected. 17-10. Iowa's 2-0, but they're well under that point total. But so Iowa State was incorrect. However, Washington State was a home dog we predicted, so we're giving credit for that one. And also the Cal Bears, they did not win, but they did cover that spread, so we're giving credit for that one as well. We're being lenient. Zeus he's a good boy, so we're gonna give him a little leeway. He's 3-1 so far on the early season with his home dogs of the week.
I like it. Shout out to Zeus. A very good.
But now when we get to our scores, things got a little interesting this past week. So you went 6-5 against the spread and 6-5 overall. So it's a quality week. You won more than you lost. But your boy over here went 8-3 overall and 9-2 against the spread. I was giving the people winners in week 2. So now we are both 14-8 overall on the season. I am 14-8 against the spread, a 1-game lead on you at 13-9. So it's tight in the first 2 weeks.
Hey, you had the stones to follow through on the Texas pick, which I should have, and then Colorado taking care of business. But I will say, feel pretty good about my Nebraska logic there, where Nebraska's defense putting on a clinic. There's only so much you can do when your quarterback is nearing the double-digit turnover mark on the road in a hostile, lively Colorado atmosphere. But we'll get into Colorado and all that and more. So there you go. A lot of time for me to make up some ground here. I'm not sweating it. Similar to the Tennessee Volunteers, it's not about how you start. It's about how you finish, Matt Green. That's what many are saying right out of the gate here, and probably Texas Tech Red Raiders coach Joey McGuire after starting 0-2 here with preseason high expectations. Matt Green, Green Line stat of the week before we get into the week that was college football week 2 here. What do you have for us in terms of this weekend, and why do I feel like it's going to hurt some Alabama fans' feelings?
Ooh, because that is the story of college football this week, my friend. And the Green Line stat of the week is that since Nick Saban arrived to Alabama in 2007, they have never lost a home game by double digits until Saturday against the Texas Longhorns. And that's even including year one, when they weren't even a good team. So since year one, which I think they lost like three home games or something, two or three home games that year, they've only lost 6 home games since year one of Saban. 4 of those 5 teams have either won the national champion or played for the national championship, won the national championship, or had a Heisman Trophy winner. Ole Miss is the only one with Chad Kelly that didn't actually have one of those things happen. You had Burrow, you had Cam Newton, Johnny Manziel. I think the only one that, and then 2011 LSU played for a national championship. So Texas is now the 6th one. Is yours going to be the Heisman Trophy winner? Is Texas going to play for the national championship? They could be the latest to do that.
Well, he made the right move with the Stetson Bennett cut after Stetson arrived at University of Georgia with his wild hair, and then getting it clean cut, the buzz cut, getting cleaned up a little bit, and it was a different kind of quarterback. And Quinn Ewers saw what Stetson did last year and was like, yeah, maybe Stet is onto something there, and made a similar cut. But we'll get into the Quinn Ewers thing there, because I think that's another big point to hit on. But I like that big stat in terms of what happened in Tuscaloosa and how rare, and that was kind of why the my gut instinct was, until I see it, I'm going to stick with Saban at home, even in these big games. And we hadn't seen it from Sarkisian to this point. This was the biggest win of his, I think, head coaching career in the college game. So we'll get into that and what that meant for Texas in just a bit. But first, I want to add some like big picture stuff and just go through the college football landscape as a whole here before we dive into some specifics. Matt Green, let's first hit the biggest surprise result. When you look at week 2 of this college football season and you look at everything that happened, because there was a lot of upsets, a lot of interesting results, but when you look around what all happened here over the weekend, what were you the most surprised about?
The most surprised I was definitely with Miami putting 48 on Texas A&M. I'll be honest, I kind of thought Miami was still trash. Like I could see the improvement that Florida State was making. Like I didn't even really see it with Miami. So Tyler Van Dyke, we didn't really know we get in the 2021 or 2022 version of Tyler Van Dyke. Maybe it was just a coordinator thing that was just a bad deal last year, and they fixed that. But I was very high on this Texas A&M team. I know you obviously were. So to see them, I mean, it was obviously a close game overall, but to get 48 points put on them, I was not expecting that at all.
I think that's fair, and they deserve a lot of credit, and we'll get into that one as well. But I like that pick in terms of the biggest surprise. The biggest storyline, though, for you coming out of this weekend is, what is it? The Saban loss, the home loss? What is the biggest storyline in college football after week 2?
The biggest storyline, I'll say, maybe not in college football, but in my world, is that I was 100% right about these Alabama Crimson Tide, sir. I'm shocked. I was shocked last week on our predictions when you didn't pick Texas to beat Alabama because of the way you've talked about Alabama, kind of agreeing with how we both feel like this team is just not what they once were. And I think it's clearly obvious because Jalen Milroe, it was a small sample size last year, but this was the exact game that you kind of worried about from Jalen Milroe. Like this team was just they did not like they had as much talent as Texas on the other side of the ball. Honestly, like it's just Alabama's still a really good program, a really good team, but they're like a regular good team now. They're not this insurmountable force that they once were. And it's the schedule doesn't get much easier. Texas could be the best team they play all season, but it's not an easy schedule by any means.
No, and I think that's fair. The thing about the reason I didn't end up picking Texas, Matt Green, is because I picked A&M to win the title, and I had A&M beating Alabama before the season in College Station. I still have that being the case, but I just looked at it as I didn't think Texas would be the one that got Alabama. The 3 losses I thought before the year was Tennessee, A&M, and Auburn is where I was headed at, where it's like you have that 2 losses and then not Auburn. It's Auburn's Super Bowl year 1. Hugh Freeze had success. We don't have to relitigate why we got to that point, but I just didn't have Texas there, and it was just kind of like a wait and see for Texas. And now they're there, and you have to recalibrate what we think of Texas. I mean, I don't know if I texted you this, but like if we had to make if we did like revise college football playoff picks each week based on what the standings are, I mean, I would say the final right now looks to me like Texas, Georgia. Like that's kind of where it looks like it's heading to me by and large. And if I had to pick who the final 2 are, I think it'd be Texas, Georgia. Would you feel similarly? And I think that's the best game, maybe.
I would, but also in terms of revising my original playoff picks, I just cross out Clemson and just write ACC champion because to right now it looks like a clear path for Florida State and Texas to get to the college football playoff, and then you get the SEC champion and the Big Ten champion. Like that feels like the college football playoff we're headed for. Like obviously Texas has got to get through Oklahoma and they got to get through all the rest of the Big 12, but Alabama was the biggest thing in their way to actually getting to the playoff because now they also have that mulligan, like a 1-loss, 12-1 Texas Big 12 champion who beat Alabama. that team is getting in the playoffs. So Texas is definitely one of those front runners right there right now, and I'd put Florida State right there with them though.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I would also say, and this is kind of speaks to what you're saying, where I'm like, everyone like two things could be true, which just is the most Pac-12 way of ending this whole Pac-12 conference. Is the Pac-12 is the best conference in college football this year, and I don't think it's really that close through 2 weeks. And B, they're going to cannibalize each other, and this is just they're going to miss the playoff again because they have so many really good teams, and they're just going to beat each other up. And they're going to get left out of the 14 playoff again. That it sucks because I think there are so many, I mean, really borderline elite teams in the Pac-12 right now. And I just, my heart is sinking just thinking about these teams just all finishing 9-3 and 10-2 because they just keep beating each other up.
Yeah, and that's the biggest argument for playoff expansion of anything, you know, and that's why I would be cool with 8, obviously 12. We've had that whole conversation a bunch of times, but I mean, because you can be a really, really good conference that just has a couple teams beat each other. But I know the Texas's back thing is like a punchline at this point, and they look like they're a legit contender right now. But this is what I feel like people don't understand. We go back to last year, the same thing. Like beating Alabama isn't what it once was. Yeah. So when you're Cam Newton and when you're Auburn, like that's the year you win the national championship, was you finally beat Bama. You know, it's like so many teams. That was the breakthrough. Georgia finally beat Alabama, got that monkey off the back in 2021. Like LSU was a flawed team last year. Like, and they beat Alabama, like, and they lost to a bad Texas A&M team. They got blasted at home by a really good Tennessee team, but they got destroyed by the team that won the SEC and won the national championship. So, like, LSU wasn't some great team that the stars aligned for in first year of a head coach. Like, Tennessee was a really good team, but also a flawed team that didn't have a very good defense. It was like their best team in 15, 20 years, but Tennessee wasn't winning a national championship either. So it's like this idea that if you beat Alabama, like that's the gold standard. I feel like that's not it anymore. It's not that Texas isn't a contender now, but it doesn't mean, oh, I guess they're like the best team in the country. It's like, no, Alabama's just kind of flawed. And you saw the Texas students, the "We Want Georgia" chant. So they know that Georgia's number one right now. So beating Alabama is a great step, but it doesn't actually mean you're the best team in the country. Like it basically has the last decade.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that is where we're at. So, man, life comes at you fast. Crimson Tide. Speaking of the SEC, though, I wanted to ask you this. Is the SEC down this year as a whole? Because a lot of bad results. There was a lot of bad offense all across the board. It wasn't just our teams struggling in the first half. It was everybody. Like Kentucky barely gets by. Well, it was Eastern Kentucky. You just had Mizzou, Vanderbilt getting blown out by Wake Forest. You just go all around. Arizona coming close to knocking off Mississippi State. Cal should have beaten Auburn late on a Saturday. And you go just up and down the list on both sides of the conference. What does Tulane do if their quarterback's healthy? Because they were in that one deep until things got a little crazy in the second half. But like by and large, a lot of teams slept walk in that first couple weekends here in the SEC, and also 3-6 against Power 5 competition through 2 weeks in the SEC. Is it too early to panic about the health of the SEC this year, or do you think it's actually just going to end up being a down year and there's going to be a lot of sneaky bad SEC teams?
I mean, you could definitely make that point that it's down, but just simply Alabama appears to be a little down. Maybe they're still really good, but they're down for Alabama. And LSU, it's hard to overreact because I think Florida State is a college football playoff team right now, but LSU didn't look great. So maybe Miami is a legit contender, and A&M and LSU just lost to two, top 5, top 10 type teams, and that it just is what it is. But I think you can definitely make the case that it's down. They're all of those losses aren't necessarily like, comparable. Like you could argue Florida is like the 12th best team in the SEC facing the team that's won the Pac-12 championship 2 years in a row. It's like those aren't necessarily, equivalents. A&M and Miami, that seems like a pretty like in the same comparable place in the SEC and the ACC. So like that's a big win. FSU and LSU, like that feels like a game that feels like a barometer for how good the conference is. Like South Carolina, North Carolina, like I mean, I think South Carolina is near the bottom of the SEC, at least the bottom half, like a middle of the road SEC team. And North Carolina is probably the second or third best team in the ACC so far. So it's hard to know with these exact out of conference matchups, but that's what the SEC has always flexed on, that the fifth or sixth best team in the conference can go beat the best team in another conference. So it's you could definitely make the point that it's not as strong as it has been in previous years.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of average. I don't think it's that the top of the top is still elite, like the Georgias of the world, the LSUs. I think we'll end up being a top 5 team by the end of the year. A&M, I'm still pretty high on. Like we'll see what happens with Tennessee over the next couple of weeks, but I mean, I still think the top of the conference is still top tier. I just think the middle and bottom is very close in the conference this year. Like, I don't think there's a whole lot separating Kentucky, South Carolina, Mizzou, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Arkansas, you name them, outside of Vanderbilt, who's still in their own bottom tier to this point. But I think there's just a huge hodgepodge of slop right there in the middle outside of the tier 1.
Yeah, and one of my bold predictions for this season was that the SEC West would have 3 2-loss teams, and none of them were gonna get to the playoff. And after all of them having 1 loss now here, like I was factoring in Texas losing to Alabama. I think that was one that I thought was going to happen. But LSU, Florida State, and A&M, Miami were definitely not SEC losses. I was factoring in. So it's going to be tough for all these teams to get to 10-2 when they already dropped a game out of conference.
For sure. Matt Green, before we get into some games, sneaky best win and sneaky worst loss over the weekend for you.
Let's see. Sneaky best win. I got to go to the Ole Miss Rebels because it's like Tulane. We don't know how good they are, like in terms of just being are they a top 10 team like they finished a year ago? But this was their Super Bowl. So there's like something about going into like, this is a good team, a good program. And this is like the biggest game on campus in history maybe for Tulane. Like the fact that you actually have some preseason expectations and an SEC team is coming to your stadium is just not a common thing. So they got off to a good start too. Like kudos to them for sure playing with their backup quarterback. But, Ole Miss, obviously, to kind of take the punches and then bounce back and then it end up pulling away. Like I feel like that was like a sneaky like character building win like early in the season.
I like that. And on the road, like you said, Tulane could still end up being a top 10, top 15 team, and that could end up looking a lot better as the season goes along. And I just wish he would have gotten the healthy quarterback there. I think that would have been nice there. But it also makes Georgia Ole Miss more interesting in the next few weeks. So that's one to keep an eye on. That might end up being a top 10 matchup by the time we get to that game in Athens in a few months. So I like that one, Matt Green. Let's talk about your dogs. Let's talk about Mike Bobo trending again this weekend. Georgia fans not happy with that first half. That screen cap that I sent you, 0-0 after the first quarter for the dogs. Still not, I mean, really just the whole case for the SEC East this weekend for the most part. Just the offense was not flowing for anybody, especially in the first half. Georgia obviously cleaned some stuff up in the second half, but the walk-on Muse, who's becoming a quick fan favorite here, it seems like he has a punt return TD early in this one, and Carson Beck kind of settled in as the game went along. The defense still looks legit all across the board. Has there been an update on Bullard? Is his injury serious?
I have not heard an update on Javon Bullard, but yeah, Mekhi Muse has definitely been a guy from absolute nowhere. Balled out in the spring game. I was like, that was a good story. But then, yeah, to see him returning kicks and punts, I think the first play of the season was like a screen pass to Mekhi Muse. Like, not really prepared for how big of a part of the offense and just the obviously the special teams this guy's been so far. But He's like, what, about 5'5", but he's making plays. Georgia loves a walk-on story. But yeah, I will say, was that?
Oh no, I was just gonna say. So, what do you think when you look at Georgia this week versus last week? Where do they look better? Where do they maybe look worse than a week ago? Where are you at there?
I mean, I think for the second week in a row, they definitely started slow, but I mean, I think this is why, like, you shouldn't be worried about Mike Bobo, because Mike Bobo never had a defense like this one. And obviously this is Ball State and UT Martin. So it's like, we don't hardly learn anything from these games anyway. Like, I can't stress that enough. See Jalen Milroe versus Middle Tennessee State. But you look at Georgia, I mean, what they did in the second quarter, like 31-0 in the second quarter, it's like this thing was 31-0 at half. Like, if Mike Bobo is trending, like, that's news to me. Like, this team's won the first two games 48-7 and 45-3. Like, you saw the defense obviously played a bigger role in the second game, forcing like multiple interceptions. I think, what was it, 3 interceptions they had in this one? And obviously the offense benefited from the short field, but it's like, if the offense gets the ball at the 25-yard line and goes 25 yards and scores, like that's all they can do, right? It's like, you're not going to have a 75-yard drive when you start 25 yards from the end zone. So this is what Georgia is. It's complementary football. The defense helps the offense, help the special teams. Like, it's a whole thing. And I think Georgia, even though they did miss a chip shot field goal in this one in the first quarter, hopefully the kickers, they do have a new kicker, so hopefully they can get that situation settle down. But yeah, I'm shocked to hear that anyone's talking about Mike Bobo, other than the fact that some weird Georgia fans out there have a strange obsession with Mike Bobo. But yeah, 48-7 and 45-3. I can't really think of much negative to say about Georgia.
But are you surprised by that? Bobo was a lightning rod 12 years ago. Like, he's going to be a lightning rod whenever anything's not normal. Like, this man is going to be the punching bag.
I'm surprised in a 48-7 and 45-3 game. Yeah, it's like Todd Monken, like, what was the Samford score last year? Like 30-0. Like, they barely beat Kent State. Like, that was like a weird game where the offense wasn't gelling, you know? So it's like, these things happen all the time. There's like this revisionist history that Todd Monken won every game 65-7. It's like, that's not really how things happen. So the offense has been fine. I'm sure Georgia's not showing everything they can do when they're playing Ball State and UT Martin. So I think Carson Beck, he threw an interception in this one that, you know, wasn't really his fault, just a deflection a ball got tipped up in the air on a deep shot. But I mean, he looked solid in this one. I think Carson Beck's athleticism, I think, is definitely an underlooked part of his game. Like, he's got just that minimal athleticism that something breaks down, this guy can run. He's not a statue in the pocket. So I think Beck's athleticism has been kind of a pleasant surprise so far. But yeah, 23 of 30, 283 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, he was efficient in this one. I think he made a few throws that you're like, you can see the talent that Beck has. But one thing, last year, the first couple of games, Georgia didn't really run the ball that well. And it's like, you're kind of seeing that in the first 2 games this year. But Dylan Bell, the sophomore wide receiver, was moved to running back some in fall camp, and you saw him actually get some carries. He had 3 carries for 28 yards and a touchdown. Like, this guy, he kind of looked like a better running back than any of the other running backs have looked so far this year. So I'm curious to see what Georgia does with that. But yeah, we'll learn a lot more about this team after facing a team like South Carolina. That obviously could still be, you know, one of the worst teams in the SEC. No disrespect to Gamecocks fans, but even if Georgia beats South Carolina 38-7 or something, I think there's still going to be people that are questioning how good this team is. I mean, I don't know. I guess you're just comparing them to perfection, and you just want them to look perfect every week, and it hasn't been perfect, but I'd be surprised to hear anyone say anything overly negative about the first two weeks. And especially because the defense is always going to be what it is. And that's just what Georgia is.
All right. I like it. With South Carolina coming up, at least you get, we both are going to be, we're excited about our preview this week because we have important Georgia and Tennessee games to talk about heading into this weekend here. But in terms of Tennessee, I'll quickly parse through. Did you watch any of Tennessee? Tennessee? Why am I blank? Austin P over the weekend.
I did not catch much of this one. I did catch the uniforms, which how do you feel about the uniforms before you get into the game?
I thought they were fine. They look a lot better because those were leaked this summer, and people were like, "Are those real?" So part of it is Tennessee has a deal with Nike that they have to change the smoky grays every year.
See, that's what I don't like. I wish they had an alternate and just like that's what they rocked. Rocking this like different alternate every year. There's something grinds my gears about that. I didn't hate the uniform like some people did, but I like the grays more than some people do. But I don't know. It was an interesting look.
It's okay. I'm also glad they got it out of the way against a team that didn't matter. So I didn't want to see those uniforms against like South Carolina or something. They're fine. They're not my cup of tea. I mean, they're perfect orange ones. The dark mode with the dark helmets are also top notch, and I think that's what they're gonna end up wearing.
They still rocking those this year? Are they gonna rock one of those? Okay. Is there a game?
South Carolina, because I think South Carolina is gonna be a night game in a few weeks. So on the 30th is my guess, because I feel like every year it's just gonna alternate South Carolina, Kentucky, because I think there's a rule that they're not gonna ever go. I think there's this unspoken rule between Georgia and Tennessee that they won't go away from traditional in that game.
Are you talking about uniforms?
Mm-hmm. They're not going to do it.
Georgia, they rock the gray a bunch when they play Georgia.
No, I'm saying now.
Tennessee.
Like I think that's just. I don't think that's going. Like I from what I
thought there was
gathered,
a few years there they rocked them against Florida and Georgia like every year.
Right. I would just say that that's probably not going to continue, and that's why you haven't seen it in the last couple of years. Is I think you're going to see the traditional looks in Tennessee, Georgia. And that's probably by design in the last couple.
Okay. Well, yeah, I didn't get much of this one, but I did see the close score early on, and I wasn't hitting up your phone like you were hitting up mine for that early score. Just want the record to show that.
Oh, hold on. Matt Green was also out, as the record shows. He was out watching Texas Bama. You were out and about. You weren't on your phone. You were doing other stuff. You weren't watching the game.
Fair.
I just kept up with. And part of the problem here too is like my family, I have a lot of a lot of Georgia fans in my family, who just have really enjoyed the last 2 years, and it's just they need to be taken down a notch. Where you just look at it and you're like, act like you've been there before, Matt Green. Act like you've been there, and also just acknowledge like you're held to a different standard than Tennessee. So when Tennessee's struggling in the first half, and they're walking through this game where there was a lightning delay, they didn't run through the tee and didn't do any of their pregame stuff because of the delay to kick things off. So that was already weird.
How are they supposed to play if they didn't run through the tee? There it is, right there.
It's a problem, Matt Green. It shakes everything up. Like as we all know, Athens is a different story if there's no rain. And you also look at this and look. Joe Milton missed some throws. Joe's been rocky. The receivers have been rough to this point. Ramel had a bad fumble. He missed a couple times. He also had a touchdown. Brew hasn't really gotten going. They went away from the deep ball. Like they have now completed only one deep ball to this point. And also, they've only tried one, like a super deep one. That was the drop early in the Virginia game with Ramel Keaton, that 80-yard rocket launcher throw. To kick things off. They haven't gone back to the well. It's hard to say if it's pass pro, but just so much lateral stuff in this game. Defensive line's legit. You can't run on Tennessee. Teams are averaging 2 yards a carry on them through 2 weeks, and that was the case last year. They were a top 20 rush defense, just as good this year. Miss Keenan Peely, who's out for a long time with a tear of some sort to his arm, we think, and he's out for a bit, so that's rough. And they're working in Elijah Herring and Arian Carter at that spot, so we'll see. But the front seven, man, is still top notch, and I think is going to cause a lot of problems for a lot of teams on this schedule. And the defense is just going to be good all year long. But offensive line, you get Cooper Mays starting center back. It looks like against Florida. That will be nice to have that continuity on that front. But I think the main story is Jalen Wright's a star. Like the lead back, Jalen Wright, has really blossomed into a big time back. He's now averaging over 10 yards a carry through 2 weeks, and it's a lot of carries and a lot of yardage. So you can't really stop the three-headed monster at the moment for Tennessee, and I think they're going to be able to run the football all year. Joe, even when he doesn't play well, he doesn't throw picks. He doesn't fumble. So it's just kind of like, look, it's rocky. It's not fun to this point. Let's just see what happens at Florida. That's my thing. That's my litmus test is like, if it's still bad at Florida, we'll have to do some revisiting because it's game on after that. And you can't really, we're done with the cupcakes of the first 2 weeks. Every week from here on out is big game football. So you got to get this stuff ironed out. But like you said, Georgia had problems with Kent State at home last year. And sometimes it might just be an early season, just silly game that just was dumb. Really bad officiating. One of the worst officiated games. There was a fumble by Austin Peay
boy.
where he takes 2 steps with the ball. I kid you not, Matt Green. I'm not an officiating guy. We've done this podcast together for many years now. I don't complain, generally speaking, with Tennessee officiating. I'm not that guy. This was one of the worst officiated football games I've seen in a long time. This was horrible. A lot of bad calls in this one against Tennessee. But like I said, the fumble they even reviewed it and still called it an incomplete pass. When I say the Austin Peay receiver caught it, took 2 steps and then got the ball knocked out, and Tennessee picked it up, and that probably would have been a touchdown for that one. Walker, Warren Burrell got hit on a special teams play that was terrible. Anyway, I could just go on and on and on. But either way, they escape with a victory, and Tennessee is on to Gainesville, where we'll learn a whole lot more about the Tennessee Volunteers and what they can ultimately be in 2023. Someone we already learned a lot about what they're going to be in 2023. And now, my college football national champion favorite, the Texas Longhorns. It turns out, Matt Green, my mind was in the wrong spot. I was close. I was in the right state, just not the right university when I picked Texas A&M to win the national title this year. I was in the right spot, just a little ways away in the right state, with the Texas Longhorns knocking off Alabama in convincing fashion late. Your guy,
you were going to
Mitchell,
say a few miles east or west, but you didn't know the geography, weren't you?
1,000%.
I don't know either. I don't know if Austin is north or south from College Station. I'm not sure.
I know it's north, but I think it's west. But I'm also Texas. I'm not going to just say that. I don't know. But Quinn Ewers, big time game. A.D. Mitchell loves blasting Alabama whenever he gets the chance to. Jalen Milroe did not look great. The offensive line for Alabama overwhelmed by Texas's front. They were dominant all game long. Man, what's your biggest takeaway? And does this win say more for what Texas could be, or does it say more of what Alabama is in 2023, Matt Green?
Well, first of all, Austin's about 2 hours west of College Station. But I think this game, it kind of reminded me of Florida State LSU, where I think it's a little bit of both. I think Texas is that good. But I think Alabama is flawed. So I think beating Alabama doesn't necessarily mean you're the best team in the country, kind of like I was saying a little bit ago. But this is definitely a program-changing win for the Texas Longhorns, because it went basically exactly how I kind of thought it was going to go. Like these Texas receivers and Quinn Ewers were just way too much for this Alabama secondary. Like Caleb Downs might be a future Pro Bowl, All-American Pro Bowl, like NFL Hall of Famer, but he's a true freshman right now. And someone like Steve Sarkisian, a just seasoned play caller in college football, one of the best offensive minds in the game, he exposed him multiple times for 2 of their big touchdowns. It's like, and that's when you're relying on true freshmen to play against some of the best players in the country, like mistakes are going to happen. Malachi Starks was one of the best safeties in college football last year as a true freshman, but he also made those mistakes and gave up a few big plays throughout the season. Georgia had a little more room for error last season, so people don't really remember it like they'll remember this Texas game. But I think this is just a massive in terms of, and that's kind of what I was talking about. What we were saying, it would have been great for Texas to get this game at home this year. Like last year, I felt like was the confidence builder that they knew they could play with these guys. And now they've come into Tuscaloosa and done it. Like, if you can go into Tuscaloosa, there's good reason to think you can beat anybody in college football.
Yeah, and I think when you look at this, it just felt like Texas was better. And you saw that with Georgia and Bama late. You saw that in different instances with Alabama of late, but not that often. Like Tennessee survived Alabama, but Alabama had dudes, and Bryce Young and company gave them everything they could handle. I thought Bama's receivers looked a little better than what we saw last year. Jalen Burden obviously had some big stuff, and there was stuff called back for Alabama in this one. I don't know. They just don't look the same.
But nothing that shouldn't have been called back, right? Like there's no like bad calls that I was aware
No.
of.
I'm just saying it happened. Like Burton has a touchdown taken away in that one. I'm just saying like that's just something to also throw out there. But by and large, Texas just looked like a complete team. And like they just have so many dudes on offense too for Quinn Ewers to parse through. And I wonder too if there's like, not to get galaxy brain here, but like no Bijan in the backfield, like the supernova safety net for Quinn Ewers to have this year. He spread the ball around, and he has Whittington, he has Worthy, he has A.D. Mitchell, he has dude after dude after dude all across this field for them. Good offensive line, good defensive line. It looked to me like he was just so confident, and some of those deep balls were pretty, and they were just perfect dimes from Quinn. He's just come a long way, and you just forget he's a bigger prospect than Arch Manning. Like he was a big time prospect coming out of high school, and it's just he's been away from that kind of spotlight for so long, and he got injured and banged up last year in the Ohio State redshirt stuff. But like Quinn Ewers has all the talent to be the best quarterback in the sport. Like that's never gone away. It's just we haven't seen it yet. And now you're seeing Texas is just, they're scary, and they're not just coming, they're here. And also, it's not special to beat Saban if you're an assistant anymore. Kirby's done it. Now Jimbo's obviously done it. And now you look at it, guess what? Next one up, here he is. Steve Sarkisian does it. Lane Kiffin was on the doorstep last year in Oxford, and Alabama survived that one. But like, we're inching closer and closer to this just not being a thing. And the assistants have kind of caught up to Nick Saban, and the sport has caught up to Nick Saban as a whole. And we can also say Tommy Rees, probably not the best offensive coordinator hire over the offseason, which was the biggest thing here. It doesn't mean Alabama's going to fall apart from here on out, but they have real problems, and they just look like a 9-3 team to me, which is what we both thought coming into the year. And Texas looks like they've made that jump, and they don't have to play the SEC schedule after this. That's the best part if you're a Texas fan. You just won the toughest game on your schedule on the road. Everything else from here on out should be pretty nice, especially after seeing SMU take it to Oklahoma for most of Saturday night and what you did to Oklahoma a year ago. Like, if you're Texas right now and you're a Texas fan, you want to be careful with how hyped you are at the moment. But, like, barring a crazy Kansas State finish, you got to be feeling pretty good that you just won the biggest game in over a decade.
No, Texas fans won't have unrealistic expectations at all now once they move to the SEC. Like, hey, we've done this. We can be the best team in the conference. But I don't know if you need to if Tommy Rees is like just to blame. Like, I think Jalen Milroe is a flawed player. Like we talked about, like the best case scenario was Jalen Hurts, and like that guy is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Like that team had a loaded defense. Like, that's what I can't stress enough. You want to play this joyless murder ball, this stuff. Well, they definitely look joyless, right, on Saturday. Like, it didn't look like they were having much fun. But you want to play this this hard-nosed throwback style. Playing elite defense was always the number one key to that style. And they're not that. Like, you saw them just get exposed, like big play after big play in the passing game, right, by Texas. So you saw that, and also just running the balls, like, they're not doing that. Like, they were not winning at the line of scrimmage against Texas. Like, Jalen Milroe had one. I was gonna say he was their leading rusher, but yeah, 1 yard less than Jace McClellan in this one. But like, Milroe's numbers are not pounding the rock type of numbers. You know, like that's not lining up and just beating the guy in front of you. Like, Milroe's numbers are play breaks down and he's running for his life and he's the best athlete on the field and he can pick up some yards. Like, actually running the ball, like Jason McClellan, 12 carries for 45 yards, like averaging less than 4 yards a carry. Like, this team isn't just dominating on the ground, and we've talked about the receivers. They don't have those elite receivers that they once had. So Texas was definitely going to be one of the best games on their schedule, but this is this team is just not what people were talking about. Like, I think so much of what Alabama's expectations were this preseason was just based on assumptions because of Nick Saban. It was like, yeah, I'm sure Nick Saban will figure it out. Like, I don't know how. I've seen we're just ignoring the writing on the walls, but we're just like, yeah, Saban's gonna figure it out, and he's the best coach of all time. But Bobby Bowden was also the best coach of all time at one point too, right? And like at some point, Florida State just wasn't the elite perennial national title contender that they always were under Bowden. So it's not to say that they're just like not an elite program anymore, but they're not head and shoulders the best like they once were.
Are you ready to say Bama cannot win the title this year based on what we've seen from this group this year?
I am willing to say that. I think this team is not capable of winning a national championship the way they're currently constructed. If Jalen Milroe, I was a little surprised, honestly, to not see any of the quarterbacks get any sort of time in this game. Like, maybe that says Milroe is like clearly the best one, but if like barring another quarterback like coming in and just completely changing how this team looks, if Milroe's the guy all year, I think it's going to work against a lot of the teams they play. I think Arkansas, I think Mississippi State, maybe even Auburn, they're going to be able to dominate a lot of the teams they play just by running all over them. But the best teams on their schedule, this is going to be a problem again, especially if Milroe makes some of the bad decisions he made. Like, both interceptions were just really just awful decisions. So that's what you can't have more than anything. If this guy's going to be kind of the limited passer, you got to be make the safe plays and then make those dynamic plays with your legs, because we see what he's capable of with his legs. Like this guy's one of the best athletes. Like Anthony Richardson, like it's talked about a lot. It's like one of the best athletes we've seen. Like, he's every bit as athletic as a runner, if not more so than an Anthony Richardson or a Jalen Hurts. So he's got that ability, but I think with how flawed this passing game looks, I think when they play their best teams, they're going to run into these problems again.
All right. I like it. Final thing here. Is Quinn Ewers now a Heisman favorite for you?
As much as anyone can be 2 weeks into the season, like at this point, nobody's done anything but Jordan Travis and Quinn Ewers, right? Like, those are the guys. I guess Drake May had a big time nationally televised game too. But I mean, Quinn Ewers is that guy. Like, he's one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and I think with the moment, right, the Heisman moment of going into Tuscaloosa, that's definitely not going to hurt his case.
No, and like when people talk about Drake May and Shedeur Sanders, who we'll get into in a second, it's like, you still got to win enough games, and I just don't know if they're going to be in the national title conversation by the time Heisman voting is going around, where the team is. Some of it's just out of their control, but like, Quinn's going to have the narrative, Quinn's going to have the numbers, Quinn's going to have potentially the team. That it's just a lot is moving in his direction that is going to work in his favor for a Heisman nod. If I had to put most likely through 2 weeks, I think Quinn Ewers would be my best guess at this point.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know how I forgot about Shedeur Sanders, because he's definitely in that conversation too. It's just Texas or just TCU and Nebraska, but man, this guy's fun to watch.
Well, speaking of Colorado, they blow out Nebraska. Jeff Sims just completely implodes in this one for the Huskers. Eventually pulled late in this game, Matt Green. It took way too long for Nebraska to pull the plug on the Jeff Sims experience, but it's just Nebraska, man. They are 0-2 now to start off the Matt Rule era. Matt Rule still has not beat a ranked team as a college football head coach to this point, so we'll see if that happens at one point this year. But Nebraska, the defense was flying all over the place. The defense really kept Colorado in check, especially for that whole first half. And that defense deserves a lot of credit for not breaking when the offense was just giving them back-breaking turnover after back-breaking turnover. They could have folded, especially on the road in an awesome environment. Like, Colorado was rocking, and it really was awesome to see that place just completely packed to the brim, and the student section coming out. Like, it's just everything about that atmosphere was awesome. You're like, man, we really miss Colorado being a top tier program in the sport because it's a great environment, great look, great locale, great fans, great uniforms. Loved what Colorado was rocking on Saturday. And they just play a really fun brand of football. And I think the biggest thing that stood out to me and really through 2 weeks of Colorado football, Matt Green, and I wonder if you agree with this, Deion's a great coach. That's not a question at this point. Shedeur Sanders is a great player and should be in the Heisman conversation right now because, look, they're undefeated and he's playing at a Heisman level. They have talent everywhere. Travis Hunter, obviously, superstar on both sides of the ball. But for me, what's most impressive about Deion is his coordinator hires. Like Sean Kelly was the perfect hire for this group and what they're playing in Colorado. Pulling him from Kent State was huge. And then Kelly from Alabama. So the defense played really hard and really deserves a lot of credit for giving Nebraska so many problems on offense. That Deion not only identifies talent extremely well, Deion identifies coaching talent extremely well. So I think that's an under talked about point when we're looking at college football coaches is how well do you hire, not just how well you recruit. What kind of coordinators do you hire? How do you put together a staff? And I think Deion deserves a lot of credit for putting together an elite staff around him because I think this is going to be sustainable because he's put together such a good staff around him.
Yeah, absolutely. This is it's just so fun to watch, man. Like you said, it's like just seeing Colorado, like the views, right, of Folsom Field and the mountains and just like an electric atmosphere. Like it's like, okay, they play college football. There's good traditions all over the country. It's like just certain programs that go up and down. But yeah, it's awesome to see just what this stadium atmosphere looked like. It's incredible. Just like they say, timing is the key to life, right? Like just the timing of all of this. Like Deion Sanders' son being like the same age as this like transcendent talent of Travis Hunter, like bringing him to Colorado. It's just like the portal is now a thing and NIL is a thing in college football. It's like this perfect storm for Deion Sanders to just come in and like just shake up college football. It's kind of incredible what we've seen so far. And I'm just like, this is like I wasn't sure what to expect from this game. Like in terms of Nebraska, like year one of Matt Rule, I think Temple and Baylor, he won like one game, maybe 2 games, year one of both of those tenures before like, I think winning the conference or playing for a conference title in year 2 at both places. So I wasn't sure what to expect from Nebraska, but I'm just like, I'm all in on Coach Prime, man. Like I'm a believer. Like they're going to get it done. So yeah, Nebraska or Colorado, just they look good again. I think they play Colorado State next week before, I want to say like back-to-back games with Oregon and USC or something like that coming up. So their schedule's definitely going to ramp up here. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun watching this team.
Yeah, no, I think it's gonna be fun and like that's just gonna be must-see television. Colorado USC is just gonna be top notch, and Colorado Oregon I think will be great.
I don't know if Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson are gonna be at Colorado State. They're just gonna be every game they're gonna be at Colorado.
Maybe, but shout out to the Buffs, 2-0 start. They deserve all the credit in the world. One of the craziest turnarounds, especially with there's so many reasons. It's pretty amazing, but shout out to Colorado for a big time win there. Miami, we touched on them a little bit at the top of the show here, Matt Green. Their offense is legit. Shannon Dawson and company has this thing moving. I made fun of the Tyler Van Dyke trademark, still will. Very cringe to this point, but he deserves credit. Tyler Van Dyke looked really good on Saturday. Miami just poured it on and just the big touchdown pass to end it. Who's the slot guy who had like a bazillion yards as like the new Braxton Berrios disciple here? What was his name?
Are you talking about the one with 3 touchdowns?
Yes.
Jacoby George.
Was it Jacoby George?
He had 5 for 94 and 3 touchdowns in this one.
Who else had a big day?
Xavier Restrepo was the leading receiver, 6 for 126.
That's who I'm thinking of. Yes, Xavier Restrepo. I think he's gonna be gobbling them up this season. But when you look at Miami, Matt Green, what stood out to you on the side of blowing out Texas A&M here at home?
Just the big plays, really. Like they were just they had so many big plays, obviously in the return game, and just Tyler Van Dyke. Like we were both critical of the Tyler Van Dyne trademark, but clearly he knew what he was doing. Before his stock got too high, he went and cashed in. But yeah, they were able to slow down this Texas A&M run game for the most part. Like Wegman, still had a solid game, but turned the ball over a few times. Like I was just really impressed with Miami all around. Like it was just especially because it looked like A&M was kind of like they looked like the better team early on. Like this game could like it started 10-0, I want to say, and Miami was up by halftime. It felt like they were just every time A&M got anything going, like they would just punch right back. So I was definitely impressed. Miami, like that was the team. Like I said, I was most surprised about this whole weekend.
Yeah, and I think it makes Miami Florida State that much more interesting later on this year. But that's always good when Miami and Florida State are relevant. That's gonna be good. It's also funny to me. Do you remember how awful Miami Texas A&M was last year?
I do. Yeah, that was one of the ugliest games all season.
And then we get a completely different game this year. The sport can just change so quickly, Matt Green. Same head coaches, by the way. Completely different result, and they look completely different. I will say, too, Connor Wegman took some shots in this game, but that dude, 2 scores down, still drove down the field and was just really unfazed. And I think he deserves a lot of credit because it's going to get lost in the loss because the defense really just imploded, and DJ Durkin quietly should be on the hot seat as the DC in College Station. But Connor Wegman looked really, really good once again in this game, and A&M's offense played pretty well for the most part, but Miami's got this thing rolling. And speaking of good hires, like Mario Cristobal, he realized Gaddis and company weren't going to work after last year. 1 year, nope, we're moving on. We're changing things out. And these new OC and DC hires look like the winners here for Cristobal and company. So shout out to Cristobal, bouncing back here in Miami. Certainly looks like a top 25 team, and we'll see if they can continue building this and if it's sustainable in the ACC and if they can catch up.
Well, what do you think?
Because we know they have the talent.
Does? Yeah, what do you think this does to the whole Jimbo conversation? Does this because I really don't feel like I've heard that much like Jimbo hot seat talk coming out of this weekend. I think a lot of maybe the logical opinions are just like, wow, Miami looked good, and maybe we're not just like fire Jimbo Fisher because they lost another game, but maybe it's just a tally mark that we'll revisit later and see how many add up, because losing to Miami at a conference isn't great, but it's obviously a big time game. But if you add that on to losses to Alabama and to LSU and maybe Tennessee, if this team loses 3, 4, 5 games, then it does feel like same old Jimbo. But I feel like maybe I'm not on the A&M message boards, but it doesn't seem like that's really the story that's coming out of this, kind of surprisingly.
Yeah, I think it's because they're all just happy that the offense is good again. And that it seems like Bobby Petrino's being able to do what he wants on offense, which is good. And Connor Wegman looks really good. So I think non-conference, it doesn't completely destroy their year. Still 0-0 in conference play. Get UL Monroe this week. Get to 2-1. Put up a bunch of points again. Then you should beat Auburn at home, 3-1, and then Arkansas. I think you'll be favored in that one in the Dallas Jerry world. You're quietly 4-1. Definitely ranked again, and then you get Bama at home, and then you see what happens. Bama at home, then at Tennessee. So I think we'll figure a lot more about A&M about a month from now than where they're at. I think Jimbo will be okay for a little bit longer. Speaking of Texas, though, the state of Texas here, Matt Green. Texas Tech outscored 20-3 in the final quarter, and another late implosion, a late loss for the Red Raiders, as I felt really good about this one. I was going to gloat late on a Saturday night here because I felt like Tyler Shook was cooking, and I thought the Red Raiders were going to pull it off against the Oregon Ducks at home, but they lose late, and Oregon deserves credit for a big come-from-behind win here. But Matt Green, what did you make of the Ducks escaping Lubbock with a victory, and do you think they're now more shaky than you had previously thought?
I guess I would put this game up there with Ole Miss Tulane in terms of the sneaky good win of the weekend, because A&M I feel like is being kind of left for dead, after losing to Wyoming in the opener. It's obviously a bad loss if you're a Big 12 team, but it felt like coming down this hostile environment, home opener for Texas Tech, like you were gonna get kind of a desperate team and you were gonna get their best shot. So I feel like Oregon coming on the road and actually overcoming some adversity and pulling away in this one, I think it's a big time win. Like I don't necessarily think anything negative of Oregon coming out of this one. I think it's a big win to go on the road for sure.
Yeah. Bo Nix good in this one, but Texas Tech, man, just rough start when they came into this year with high expectations, and now they're quickly in a hole here in the Big 12. Does this change how you see the Pac-12?
Still 0-0 in the Big 12 though, right?
That is true. Who the heck is the best team in the Pac-12 right now to you?
To me, it's the Oregon Ducks.
Okay.
Like I
So
think
you're still good on
USC. Yeah, USC. I just have no idea of. Like obviously, Oregon. All we've seen is Texas Tech. I'm not gonna take anything from 81 points versus Portland State. And Utah had the good win over Florida, and obviously barely escaped Baylor this weekend. But they're playing without their starting quarterback. Like so, Utah. It's kind of weird because you don't really know what they are exactly. And I kind of feel it's similar with Utah as far as like Oregon, just going on the road to a Big 12 stadium and just finding a way to win when you didn't have your A game essentially. So I don't know, and I guess that you put up to those three, but I guess Washington's kind of the one that's getting like left out that you kind of forget about. But they've looked as impressive as anybody, and their offense is basically not missed a beat from last year.
Oregon State too. I mean, they're a top 15 team.
Yeah.
Like you just look at it. I don't know who it is at the moment, but there's just a lot of top end talent. I can't wait for those conference games in the next few weeks to get started. But Matt Green,
I think I'm still liking Oregon by an edge so far to this point.
Okay,
But Caleb Williams might be the best player in college football, and that's the X factor that USC's got.
Yeah, I mean Utah's won a back to back. I err on Utah and Washington, but we shall see, Matt Green. We shall see. Utah, though, you mentioned them. They escape here on the road without Cam Rising once again. But to get 2-0 with a win at Baylor and Florida at home without your star quarterback under center, I think is a huge dub for the Utes, Matt Green. But the biggest one, I think, coming out of this game for me is Dave Aranda sneaky a nice bet for first coach fired this year. Like, we didn't have him on our list here, but quietly, this is turning into maybe a dumpster fire. All eyes were on Neil Brown, but is Dave Aranda in some trouble here? And if you're a Baylor fan, what are you thinking?
I mean, you're not wrong. Baylor just doesn't feel like the type of program that's got the quick trigger. Like this team won the Big 12, right? Or did Oklahoma State win that? Yeah, they won the Big 12 in
They
2021.
won because Oklahoma State, if they had won it, then they're in the playoff.
Might have gotten to the playoff, right? Yeah. So they just won the conference in 2021. So if you're Baylor, like it's obviously 0-2 start is not what you want, but 2 years removed from a conference championship, especially if you look at what this conference like post Texas and Oklahoma, like Baylor's probably positioned to be one of the better programs in that conference. I think Dave Aranda's he's built himself a little leeway that like this maybe going into next year, if it doesn't get any better this year, going into next year there could be some hot seat talk. But I think he's safe in 2023.
Okay. It's gonna be a sneaky bad year. What's their schedule looking like? Is a bowl game like maybe out of the question already for them? Have they dug themselves too big of a hole?
I mean, when you're counting preseason win totals, yeah, the Texas State game was definitely a win in the preseason win-loss.
Cincinnati is a lot better than expected. You get that on the road. You have to go to UCF, Texas Tech, who will be hungry for a. I mean, this looks like you're at TCU, at Kansas State. Matt Green, this looks like a 3-9 team now.
Yeah, but still a lot of winnable games, though. Like, I mean, these are like the whole Big 12 is like a toss-up schedule. Like Texas, you would probably count as a loss to this point. But like UCF, Texas Tech, Cincinnati, Iowa State, Houston, even TCU and West Virginia, like I would say they're probably better than West Virginia, but like who really knows about them? But it's like I couldn't tell you if those are. We're talking 3-point spreads, like in all of those games, like the rest of the way. I'd think like they just seem like toss ups.
That's fair. Let's hit Notre Dame surviving NC State 45-24 here. Sam Hartman gets over the Wolfpack hump, 0-2 to that point on the road, dating back to his time at Wake Forest. Is it time to take the Fighting Irish serious as a college football playoff contender, Matt Green?
Man, I hope you watched College Game Day, or at least recorded it on Saturday, sir. Did you tune in on Saturday morning?
Notre Dame, I have to say this, Matt Green. Is this going to be an old man take? Game Day is dead to me. Game Day is not what it used to be. Game Day is not a must watch for me anymore. It's not for me. I forgot someone who made this comparison where it's like it feels like Game Day was a mom and pop store that got bought out by a chain, and I just haven't been able to unsee that, and that's kind of what it feels like to me. It's just not.
It's not. I don't hang on their every word like I once did, without a doubt. But you would have thought, for one, that Notre Dame NC State was Game Day. It was the Sam Hartman show, man. They talked to this guy so much, and so you didn't catch this rib story.
No.
On College Game
I already know
Day.
about it though.
And this guy's got basically the shark tooth. What is it? Conch necklace? Like, is that what they call it? Yeah, and it's his rib on the instead of a shark tooth. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. It was honestly disgusting, but yeah, Sam Hartman got so much FaceTime. I love the pregame interviews they'll do though, like with guys like miking them up when they're just like on the field wherever and warm-ups. They did one of those with him, but yeah, I think Notre Dame, like with Sam Hartman, they're a different beast, to be honest. Like they're so like, they feel like they've been the same team since Brian Kelly got there. Like, and obviously Marcus Freeman now, that they're just fundamentally sound, like, you know, not too high, not too low kind of thing. But they just haven't had that difference maker at quarterback. And Sam Hartman, he seems like a guy that makes them capable of being able to beat just about anybody they play. Like they're gonna have a really fun schedule this year, and I'm getting excited for Ohio State Notre Dame in a couple weeks, because I think that was a game that I don't think many of us took too seriously on Ohio State's schedule preseason, and now I'm not positive the Buckeyes are better than Notre Dame.
No, and I think the Buckeyes still have some problems. They're 26th in yards per play right now in the nation. Notre Dame, number 8, coming in there with 8 yards per play, rounding out the top 10. USC 1, Washington 2, UCF 3, Miami 4, Oregon 5, Louisville, who's quietly been really good out of the gate here, 6, New Mexico State, sure, at 7, and then Georgia Tech. Look at Georgia Tech. Matt Green looking a little bit better with your guy Buster Faulkner, Part V legend, and then Florida State rounding out that top 10. But yeah, I think Notre Dame, they can run it. They're the best quarterback they've had in 10 years plus. In Sam Hartman, I don't think they can win the title, but do I think that they can find their way into the college football playoff? Do I think Notre Dame, USC, Notre Dame, Ohio State are must watches? Yes. I'm curious. They have a top 10 passing defense to this point as well. You just look at all the numbers.
Audric Estime, if that's how you pronounce his name, leading the country in rushing right now too.
They're complete. Like they're a dangerous team. Notre Dame is a team to be taken seriously this year here. So quickly to wrap things up with
a lot more FaceTime for your boy.
A lot more FaceTime for our wives, boys, as you know. It seems you just slip up when you say, I don't know where it comes from.
Yeah, just you.
Cougars beat Wisconsin back-to-back years, and they were fired up, did some nice stuff for Mike Leach. They did black pirate flags and shirts all over the stadium for the Cougs in honor of the late head coach who passed away in December. Wisconsin, 16 straight points late to try and come back and win this one, but they come up short. So a big win for the Cougs. Ole Miss, we talked about outscoring Tulane 27-3 in the second half to beat the Green Wave. Oklahoma surviving late against SMU. SMU actually outgained them 367-365. And then Auburn surviving super late against Cal. Matt Green. Any other
Man,
big games
and
here?
nobody wanted to win that game, man. Like
Oh.
Cal had just so many. I don't know how many field goals they missed, and then which forced them to have to kind of go for it late in the game too. Like
They also got
man,
robbed a touchdown early. That stupid call where the linebacker made a great play with Peyton Thorne where he fumbled it and the linebacker catches it and runs it into the end zone. They reversed the call, but because they called it originally as out of bounds, they didn't give him the touchdown. Like, that's the difference in the game right there, Matt Green.
This felt like, obviously, I make a lot of things about Georgia. I'm a Georgia fan. This felt like one of those, like, Georgia, Missouri, going at Missouri, like, because it's always like a real late night game for Georgia, and it's not like the best team on Georgia's schedule. But there's something weird about Missouri, and they seem to play Georgia close a lot. And so like Auburn did not play their best game by any means. The defense, I was impressed with the defense in this game, but like Peyton Thorne 94 yards passing, just offense did not do much in this one, but it's like you just found a way to win, and it's like a win's a win. Like you went across the country, like it might not be a Power 5 champion or a Power 5 contender or anything this year, but if you're Auburn, you're 2-0, and this is a good win. Like, and this is like the perfect type of win that's like you're easing into the schedule, right? It's not going at Texas A&M or something, but it's a nice little baby step that like it's got to build some confidence moving forward for Auburn.
I like it. Matt Green, anything else we missed here in our week 2 recap show here?
No, that's all I got, man. I'm excited for week 3. We'll see what happens. Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. Seeing more conference games. I'm here for it. I think Mississippi State, LSU, I think is our only other SEC conference game next week.
Still a lot of good big games, and then the week after is a lot of juggernauts as well. So it's we got through the most boring part of the college football season here, and this weekend was fun by and large. So I'm excited about week 3 preview. Will be up on Thursday, so look out for that. Taping that on Wednesday evening. But as always, Matt Green, thank you, and I'll talk to you very soon.
Yes, sir.